Add-on Solutions. Add-on Desire.
Hello viewers, welcome to Adopt Solutions Daily News Analysis session. I am Lokesh Pengonda. This session is designed while keeping in mind the needs of aspirants preparing for groups, banking and such other examinations. Make use of it. So our first article will be talking about the collegium system and the high courts. So the high court judges are appointed by the president. So who would recommend the appointment of high court judges? Before appointing the high court judges, president has to take the opinion of Chief Justice of India plus two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Apart from these three people, also there is a need to take opinion of Chief Justice of concerned High Court, where the judge has to be appointed. Also, there is a need to take the opinion of the governor of the state where the High Court has its jurisdiction. So, one Chief Justice, two senior most judges of the Supreme Court, three Chief Justice of the concerned High Court, and four Governor of the High Court, Governor of the state of the High Court. So these five people will give the opinion to the president regarding the recommendation to appoint the High Court judges. And in this article, we can see that the Supreme Court is asking the government why there has been a huge delay in the appointment process of the High Courts. That is, the Supreme Court and the collegium system has recommended several names. Nearly 55 names, 55 people were recommended by the Supreme Court Collegium to the center to appoint them as the High Court judges. But there has been huge delay to accept these decisions, accept these recommendations, and as a result, there has been huge vacancies in various high courts of the states. So in this image, you can see that in the Patna High Court, the vacancy is 60%. In the High Court of Calcutta, the vacancy of judges is 55%, and even in the states of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, there are vacancies more than 48%. So we can see that there has been a huge vacancies in the high courts. This is mainly due to the fact that the center has been sitting on the recommendations without taking any decision on these. So now we'll see how many high courts exist in the country and which high courts have jurisdiction over more than one state or union territory. First, there are 25 high courts in India, and among these 25 high courts, there are 6 high courts which have jurisdiction of more than one state or UT, that is union territory, and the sanction strength of the 25 high courts combinedly is nearly 1080. That is, the maximum amount of high court judges that can be allotted to these 25 high courts is 1080. And whereas now, due to the delay in the appointment process, nearly 419 of these sanctioned 1080 are lying vacant. So now we will see various high courts which have jurisdiction over more than one state or union territory. The 6 high courts are Bombay High Court, Kolkata High Court, Madras High Court, Guwahati High Court, Kerala High Court, Punjab and Haryana High Court. The High Court of Bombay has jurisdiction over Maharashtra, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, Daman, Diu and the Goa. The Kolkata High Court has jurisdiction over West Bengal and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So one state, one union territory. Similarly, the High Court of Madras have jurisdiction over the state of Tamil Nadu and over the union territory of Pondicherry. Guwahati High Court has jurisdiction over states of Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. The High Court of Kerala has jurisdiction over one state called as Kerala and over one union territory called as Lakshadweep Islands. And the Punjab and Haryana High Courts have jurisdiction over Punjab, Haryana and Chandigarh, that is 2 states and 1 union territory. So these are various courts which have more than 1 state or 1 union territory as their jurisdiction. And now we come to the next article, which is talking about a new airport at Kurnool, which is called as Vorvakal Airport. As this is near Orvakallu, this is inaugurated in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and this new airport has been named as Uyyalawada Narasimha Reddy. So who is this Uyyalawada Narasimha Reddy? He is a freedom fighter from the region of the Kurnool. So this airport has been named as Uyyalawada Narasimha Reddy Airport. Next, we have an article talking about the 1-year extension given to K. Vijayaraghavan. So who is Mr. K. Vijayaraghavan? He is the current principal scientific advisor to the government of India. Now we will see the background of principal scientific advisor. In the year of 1999, the office of principal scientific advisor has been set up by the cabinet secretariat. That is, this office is not a constitutional body. This office is not an executive body. That is, this is not a statutory body, but rather an executive body set up under the Act of Cabinet Secretariat. So what are the objectives for setting up this Office of Principal Scientific Advisor? The objectives involve policies, strategies and missions for generation of innovation. This is one important objective, and also to function as a secretariat to the Scientific Advisory Committee. So these two are the main objectives for establishing the Office of Scientific Advisor. That is, one, innovation promotion, and second, to act as a secretariat for the Scientific Advisory Committee to the Cabinet. And also we should note that the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council, which is called as PM STAC, is the overarching council that facilitates the Principal Secretariat's office. So these are various issues that are related to the position of Principal Scientific Advisor. Next, we have an article talking about National Highway Authority of India. So what is this National Highway Authority of India? This is a body which was set up in 1988. This is a body made by statutory law. That is, this is body set up under the National Highway Authority of India 1988 Act. So this body was set up mainly for promotion of infrastructure, mainly for laying of more roads. So under which ministry does this body come under? It comes under the Ministry of Road, Transport and Highways. So what is the main objective of bringing up this body? This is to promote the national highways development projects along with minor projects for development, maintenance and management. So to promote the national highways and also for other projects which are minor in nature, for this development and maintenance and management, this body has been created under the National Highway Authority of India Act 1988. And we have an article talking about Enforcement Directorate. Enforcement Department or the Enforcement Directorate is a multidisciplinary organization. It was mandated mainly to enforce the Foreign Exchange Management Act and the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So to enforce these two laws, the Enforcement Directorate is mainly working for. So what is the origin of the Enforcement Directorate? In 1956, Enforcement Directorate has been set up as an enforcement unit. This enforcement unit was set up under the Department of Economic Affairs. So under which ministry does the Department of Economic Affairs work? It comes under Ministry of Revenue. So this enforcement unit was under the Ministry of Revenue, and it later on became the Enforcement Directorate. Its main objective is to enforce the Foreign Exchange Management Act and the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So this is the crux of Enforcement Directorate or the Directorate of Enforcement. Next, we have an article talking about North Korea launching ballistic missiles near the Sea of Japan. We need to have a brief understanding about the reason for the existence of two Koreas. Between the year 1910 to 1945, the Korean Peninsula was under the occupation of Japan, and as Japan lost in World War II, the territories under Japan were shared between the winning countries, which are mainly the communists of USSR, that is Russia, and the countries of USA and its allies. As USSR is a communist country, it supported the regime of communist forces in the North Korea. As United States and its allies follow the policy of democracy, they promoted the policy of democracy in the South Korea. So as after the World War II, Japan has lost its territories, and as the Russian forces has invaded the North Korea and they are hesitant to move away from this territory, the region, the Korean Peninsula, was divided at the 38th parallel, and the line and the area above this line has been given under the influence of the Russia, and the area below the 38th parallel will be under the influence of the Western countries. So we have two Koreas, one following authoritarian regime and communism, and another following democracy and rule of law. As North Korea is pursuing nuclear weapons, many countries of the West, especially the United States and the United Nations, has put out several sanctions on the North Korea, and to threaten these countries and to remove these sanctions, the North Korea under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, launches ballistic missiles every now and then to threaten the stability in the region. So this is the background for North Korea and the South Korea. Next, we have an article which is talking about the aggressive nature of the China in the South China Sea. China has claimed many parts of the South China Sea under its 9-dash line policy. So what is this 9-dash line? China has given an imaginary line in the South China Sea. As you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. China says that whichever territory is in this region of this 9-dash line belongs to China. As China has been the sovereign nation, and China has control over this region from ancient times. So you can see that many parts of the South China Sea lie under the 9-dash line, and also you can see many countries which are like Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines and Taiwan. These countries also claim the land in this 9-dash line in the South China Sea. So we have countering claims. These countries claim that they have the ownership, they have the sovereignty rights over the regions, over the islands of the South China Sea, because you can see clearly here, these countries lie nearer to these regions, so they claim sovereignty over this island, whereas China, through its 9-dash line, which is based on its own imaginary, ancient, sovereign principle, claims these lands. So every now and then China sends its armored carriers, also some other boats which are sponsored by the Chinese army and Chinese navy, to these contested regions to claim these lands and to pressure the countries lying near to the islands and the countries which claim these islands. So what we have is China showing its aggressive nature in the South China Sea, and laying claims to the areas which are clearly belonging to other countries. And in the recent times, we have seen that China sending nearly 200 boats which are seen near the area of Whitsun Reef. Whitsun Reef is a part of Scarborough Shoal, and you can see here this island region is really near to the Philippines, but whereas China claims ownership rights over these islands. So this is the article talking about. Next, we have an article talking about crackdown in the country of Belarus. So where is this Belarus? Belarus is a country in the Europe. Belarus was initially a part of USSR. In the year 1991, USSR, that is former Russia, in the year 1991, USSR, that is Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. This organization, this country was disintegrated, and it led to the formation of 15 countries. So we can see here the various countries which got independence, which became independent after the disintegration of USSR. The countries are Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Russia as a whole. So all these 15 countries were member countries of USSR, but due to various political and economic reasons, in the year 1991, the USSR as a body was disintegrated and these 15 independent countries was formed. And now one of these 15 countries, which is Belarus, is seeing mass protests. Will not go into the reason of this protest, we'll just see the capital of Belarus. The capital of Belarus is Minsk. And these are the 15 countries which are formed in 1991 after the disintegration. And next we have an article talking about Air India. So we'll see the background of Air India in this session. Air India was founded as Tata Airlines. It was founded in the year 1932 by Mr. J.R.D. Tata. So Air India was not a body which was formed by the government. It was earlier formed as Tata Airlines by Mr. J.R.D. Tata, and in the year 1946 it became a public limited company. So after it became a public limited company, the government of India has brought a stake of 49% in this organization, and later on in the year of 1953 the country has nationalized this transport carrier. That is, in the year 1953 the government has compulsorily acquired this air transport organization, and the government has passed an act called as Air Corporations Act 1953. So what is the main objective of this Air Corporations Act 1953? It provided monopoly rights. That is, Air India alone can be in the business of flying and no other private firm can enter this business. So through the Act of 1953, the government has monopolized the air travel in India, but due to many reasons, in the year 1993, Pramod Mahajan committee has recommended to demonopolize it, and it recommended to accept the private sector players in this aviation business. As we all know, as there is only one air transport carrier, there is no competition, and there was no private sector involvement, and due to which whatever the charges the Air India is planning to charge, the traveler has to pay this amount, and due to no private sector participation in this industry, the investments and also the jobs which this industry was able to provide is also very reduced. So in the year 1993, Pramod Mahajan Committee has recommended to allow the private sector participation in the aviation business. So this is the background of Air India and the monopoly Air India has gained in the years between 1953 and the years 1994. Next, we have an article talking about Indian women getting gold medals in the 25 meters sports pistol. As Manu Baker, Rahi Sarnabot and Chinky Yadav has able to get gold medals in the 25 meters sports pistol, the tally of the India has been increased in the World Shooting World Cup. So in the Shooting World Cup, India's tally of the gold has been increased because of the 3 athletes. So with this, we are ending this session. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel.
Add-on Solutions. Add-on Desires.